Now, this is an example of a live classroom discussion. Now, as it turns out, I was at a little school in Mumbai speaking to them about electronic learning and Scholar, and so we set up this little community. And I just asked this quick question: what ways do you think learning is going to change in the future? And I got all these very interesting responses: be accessible, virtual classrooms, students will not miss lessons even if they're absent, it's going to be innovative, research-based learning experience, and a whole lot of different voices, different responses, all coming to the same answer. Now, in a way, this is the same dialogical structure as you just saw with the extended answers in my classroom, but it's happening on the fly, it's happening much quicker, and it's happening live in the classroom. Now, what are the differences between this and traditional classroom discussions? Well, in a classroom, only one person could speak at once. It's not possible to hear everybody. It's not just not practicable to do that. And we don't know whether everybody's actually listening, paying attention and whatever. This, if you like, demands a certain sort of engagement because it's obvious if you're not responding. But also it produces multiple voices. And also what it does, it produces a cognitive intensity, which often just talk and one person talking at a time gets a bit boring, and this is actually something where we can increase the level of engagement. So for me, what's very interesting about this is, in fact, it's Socratic dialogue. In fact, it's a classic pedagogical mode, which is proposition, response, response, response. So update, comment, comment, comment. But it's transformed by being in this kind of mode, and I think in some ways, it's actually improvement on that as a mode, or certainly a supplement on that as a mode. Another feature that I would like to mention of this Socratic dialogue is the nature of the text. So when I speak in oral language, in fact, it's redundant. It's a bit, goes around in circles. In fact, it doesn't even have sentences. It's just a whole pile of clauses strung together. But when I move to written discourse, there's a level of formality, a level of systematicity, and a level of elimination of redundancy, a form of orderliness, which is characteristic of academic thinking. So for me, moving classroom discussion into this space is actually part of the process of building up what I would call academic literacy, which is the capacity to frame your ideas in these highly premeditated and highly structured kinds of ways. So see this piece of writing here, it's a reasonably informal update that's been made, but it's relatively highly structured with half a dozen or 7 quite clearly thought through points. And when people write back, they're writing back in ways which are quite really a little bit like oral language, but again it's this dialogical form where they're moving from the world of informal orality to a more formal discourse. And by the way, there I can add a comment myself there at that point if I want to jump in on that conversation. So there are a couple of features about this as a classroom discourse form. The other thing that I want to say is, look over here on this side, the shares. In fact, this is where I put content. I've got an article on the flipped classroom, I've got the course outline, but in fact, for me, the content's over on the margins. I mean, a lot of learning management systems are really about shoveling out content. They're about content delivery. They're about positioning you as a knowledge consumer as opposed to a knowledge producer. In the center of this world are classroom discussions down the middle, where in fact that's the center. I mean, this is a student-centered approach to learning, or a participant-centered approach to knowledge, whichever way you want to frame that.